Pixar. They make big money by giving emotions to things that don't normally have them, like toys, or rats, or gingers. Well, in this video, I'm asking the question, what if logos had emotions? So I'll be turning these famous logos into Pixar characters ready for their own movies. But I won't be using any fancy 3D software like real Pixar artists do. I'm going to attempt to hand paint realistic 3D models all in Photoshop. Pray for me. Now, according to Reddit, their logo is supposed to be a stylized, smiling alien named Snoo. He represents the friendly, conversational community aspect of Reddit. Yeah. Okay, but let's be real. This is not an alien. This is straight up Eva with a TV antenna. So I am gonna make him a robot. But to be accurate to the Reddit lore, I guess he can be an alien robot. I'll leave him in his happy little bubble, but I'll give it more of a gradient look instead of solid orange. Alrighty, first off, I'll start by making this smooth head shape with a vector curve instead of trying to draw it by hand. Making just half of the head lets me flip it so it's perfectly symmetrical. Then come the little blobs that I assume are his ears, which are completely solid, so I'm not sure he can even hear out of them. But I'll use the older Reddit logo as a reference for his body and the two bulbous arms hanging down from his sides. Now I've made all these pieces separate so it'll be easier to paint the shadows onto them, and I'm thinking I'll go with a soft, smooth shading, kind of like Baymax from Big Hero 6, adding in some extra light here up top and a smooth rim light here on the shadow side will really start to give us a pretty convincing 3D shape. I'll do a similar process for the ears, being sure the head also casts a shadow onto that. Then a thin black strip right in here will make the ears look attached to the head with a thin gap in between them. Now let's make this body nice and round, like the Pillsbury Doughboy. Now, one thing that pretty much always helps these types of things feel more realistic is ambient occlusion, which is when surfaces that are close together appear darker, like this little crevice here where his arm and side are touching. Speaking of which, I think I'll break the arm into two pieces so he can have some kind of little joint there, I guess. Now this dude has got some pretty big eyes, and luckily I found what are apparently round glass lamps or car headlights, which I think will work perfectly for his peepers. Just need to be orange like the original logo, and a little cleanup so they don't feel so messy. The sockets are going to be darker up here where the light is being blocked, brighter in this area where the light will actually hit it, and we can't forget the glow coming off the orange eyes. Now a cool little trick I figured out is that I can paint over this corner with the blur brush, and it makes it look like a smooth rounded edge instead of a sharp one. Since the Reddit logo is probably the only thing on the site that's actually happy, we'll give him a big smiling Pixar style mouth, which is basically just two tiny thin lips with a little shading under here so it protrudes out slightly. Next, I'm going to make a small panel at the top of his head to create that bent antenna he's got going on, a shiny metal ball on the end, some rivets to segment the metal and add a little detail, and we'll make sure it's reflecting that nice orange background behind it. Now, one of Reddit's key features are these little arrows that let you upvote or downvote posts, so I think it'd be really cool to put some arrow buttons on our robot pal here. That way you can press his up button if he's doing a good job, and if he gets too many downvotes, I guess he just goes straight into the incinerator. Finally, I feel like a good robot is supposed to look clean and shiny. Bruh. So I'm going to paint some highlights on different parts of his body to mimic the appearance of reflections. So here we have our Pixar style Reddit logo, who looks like he's ready to bring all the happiness of Reddit to the rest of the world. Now we move on to the ultimate challenge of creating a human, but not just any human, the world famous Colonel Sanders, who is the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. If we look at some of Pixar's more elderly characters, sometimes they are really detailed with a lot of sharp facial features. Sometimes they're very stylized, but have a softness to their skin. And sometimes they're just left in the pool way too long. I'm thinking the old man from Up is more the style I want to go with this. But first, I have a big announcement. I just released a brand new app called ClickPilot. It's an amazing tool to help you create highly clickable thumbnails and titles for YouTube videos. I myself have seen videos explode to millions of views after changing to a better thumbnail. So let's say your video is about putting your pet hamster through a tricky obstacle course. You can search through a database of viral videos to get ideas for your thumbnails and save them all to your inspiration board. You can even search for similar thumbnails to get a bit more variety, or you can even use our Chrome extension to save videos directly from YouTube. Using that inspiration, create some potential thumbnails. But to see which one will work best, upload all of them to ClickPilot to see exactly what they'll look like on YouTube, including the mobile app, desktop search results, and the sidebar. But what's really cool is you can enter a search term like hamster challenge and see how your video stacks up against popular videos in that niche. You can even add in a short description of your video, and ClickPilot will give you search terms and YouTube channels to test your video against. chance, always giving you the best chance to stand out against the competition. Oh, and if you struggle with titles, just click the generate button over here and get an array of YouTube-ready titles that will make people click. You can share the entire ClickPilot project with your team or a client, and they'll be able to see and flip through all the title and thumbnail options for themselves. Sign up for ClickPilot within the next week and get 20% off your first 3 months. I hope you all enjoy it because me and my brother worked super hard on it. So I can start sketching a blueprint for my design using a Loomis head, which is just a circle with the sides cut off and a lower extension to roughen the jaw. Now we can take a picture of the kernel and map his more defining features over to this skeleton. Well, he's got quite the bean-shaped head with a large rounded nose. He'll need some big cartoony eyes, and his subtle smile can go right down here. His ears will run from the top of his eyes down just past his nose. Then his glasses, wavy hair, and goatee, and a squarish body with his traditional bow tie and apron. Now that we've got a decent design laid out for the character, just like the Reddit design, I'll make some separate refined shapes that can be painted on top of. Now, skin doesn't react to light the same way other materials do. A normal object will generally have a linear color change as it goes from its lightest point to its darkest. But with skin, you often get this strip of red right before the dark areas. This is called subsurface scattering, and it's caused by how translucent our skin is. Computers can render this stuff pretty perfectly, but I'm gonna have to be my own computer today, so I'm using a little trick where I set up a gradient map layer that lets me paint in black and white, and it'll convert it into a skin tone region, including that little red strip. So you can see how we get those nice skin tones as I'm shaping up the nose here, especially as we move into bigger areas like the forehead, where I'm making sure to account for the shadow his hair is going to cast on this side of the face. The shadow from his glasses will wrap around like this and become more diffused the further out it goes. Sanders does have some pretty defined cheek flaps.
I hope you mean your face!
So I'll give those some dark creases that taper out at the bottom and blend into his chin. Now a normal human eye, pretty complicated, but a Pixar eye, basically two simple flaps around a ball. Just fade the flaps into the skin. The lower lids catch a little light right around the rim, and most Pixar characters don't even bother with things like eyelashes. I will stick a little eye bag in though, just to show his age, along with some wrinklage in the corner of the eyes. And I'm sure the hectic environment of a fried chicken kitchen will certainly leave a man with a few forehead wrinkles too. Following the average Pixar style, once again, the mouth is just two thin lips and a few smooth, blocky teeth. One area you'll really notice skin's translucent nature is in the ears, so I'm gonna make this one really red so it looks like there's a bright light shining through it from behind. Now the color shader isn't perfect, so I'll just come in and fix a few of these areas that are a tad too red. And now when it comes to the eyes, Pixar uses a fairly realistic style with a good amount of detail, which mainly breaks down into some darkness around the pupils, some along the edge of the iris, a few randomly sized lines coming out from the center of the eye, and the whole thing will be darker on the top and lighter on the bottom. Lastly, we can't forget that shine that makes them feel alive. Next, these glasses need to look shiny and plasticky, and for a little extra detail, I'll warp a separate copy of the face and then mask it out so that that layer only appears where the glass meets the frame, which is a common type of distortion you get on regular glasses. And finally, just a touch of glare in the corners to round it off. And now for the hair. I'm going to try to take this texture and warp it to follow the shape of my sketch. I just have to make a ton of pieces and blend them all together. Just adjust the color on that, make it a lot brighter, then get some basic shading in here, especially around this deep hair pocket and along this inner ridge where the hair folds over. Now I've got this really cool little hairbrush that basically just paints a bunch of strands. And I'm gonna come in here and update some of the lighting and contrast of the original texture, just to help it better fit with its new shape. You can kind of see the before and the after. Basically, I just wanted a little less detail so it looked more cartoony. But I do need to come in here and break up the hairline to make it look like individual hairs are coming out of the scalp instead of a giant sheet. And it also really helps to paint a little skin tone over the base here because the hairs there aren't super dense and you'll end up seeing some of that skin through them. Now, unless you're using gallons of hair gel, you're gonna have a lot of little bumps in your hair, some little twiddles here or there, and a few strays popping off. The eyebrows are a very similar process. I'm just making the ends a lot thinner so they look more feather-like. Same thing goes for the stash and the goatee, which will have the most strands of all frilling out from the sides. Now, Pixar kind of has this thing for super smooth skin, but even they give a little texture when you look up close. So I'll throw in some splotches here or there, nothing too crazy. I'm really just trying to keep the entire face from looking like plastic. And all these new tiny bumps and dots will help us do just that. Then a nice rim light around the dark side here to help tie in that light I said was over in the distance. I guess I will give him his little circular home back with the KFC logo by his side. Now the Chicken Emperor spares no expense when it comes to his suit. He's got a fancy cream colored jacket, which needs a little wrinkle to keep it from feeling stiff. And all of that will be made out of the finest tweed that money can buy, which will have a lot of tiny little lint pieces coming off of it that that I can easily make using a charcoal brush, believe it or not. Let's just get a rim light on that to match the face. And heck, I'll even throw in a buttonhole here on the collar. He'll pair that with a simple white shirt underneath, and of course his famous bow tie, called the Kentucky Colonel tie, which was actually named after him. Lastly comes the apron, and I'll actually borrow a seam from an apron I used in my last video, where I hand painted a realistic version of Wendy's mascot. I'll grab the texture from that as well, paint in the 3 white stripes the original logo had, then a few extra wrinkles up top to show that this thing has been worn. Of course, the straps will be pretty similar too, and that whole thing will cast a nice shadow onto the suit. Well, the Colonel is now out of the fried chicken business, and he's ready to star in his very own summer blockbuster. Oh, and this thing literally took 600 layers, so you should subscribe. If you want to see me combine brands that really shouldn't go together, then watch this video right here.